Snowy peaks and open skies, northern winds whisper goodbyes.
All right.
Dreams take
Well,
root
we're gonna
where the
shortchange that
meadows
intro
grow.
there. Alicia and I are scrambling today, you guys. I'm sure many of you are wondering, are they even going live today? We're here. We are here. We were recording a special podcast episode this morning that took a little bit longer than we anticipated, on all the problems people are having with accompanying spouses and the point calculations within the comprehensive ranking system, and just all the permutations and problems that arises when you're listing a spouse as non-accompanying and or accompanying, and just trying to calculate things properly. So we did a special episode of the podcast. It'll be released this week, so stay tuned for that. And other than that, Alicia, it has been a busy week once again.
Yeah, right back after the holidays. I think there's been just an onslaught of stuff happening with and get back to clients, and lots of people who have an express entry invitation to apply because, of course, right before the new year, there were a number of big draws. And so we had lots of big back-to-back draws in the middle of December. And so a number of our clients got invitations to apply and now are hurrying to try to get their applications in. I know we had a big panic yesterday because some of my clients had language test results that were literally expiring. And so we had to hustle and get that EAPR in before their language test expired. So it was, yeah, it's been busy.
A little bit rough and tumble for sure. And if we look here, we can expand this just a little bit for us here. We can see that there was a round of invitation just today, another CEC, Alicia. And look at this, okay? This is massive news for people. 8,000 invitations issued that pulled the score all the way down to 511. So we talk about those other scores. Everybody's posting the comments, right? We've got Sonny here. And this is, it's positive news for people. I was not sure if it would, if we would see this, but this is one of the largest CEC draws that we've seen to date. Yes, we had that massive 27,332 draw. People are talking about starting off the year, yes, with a big draw. We're pretty happy about that. Lots of positive comments. Joe said he loves the intro song. That's great. We've got comments on the Raptors. So, yep, go Raptors. Tom, good to see you in Brockville. Akash, hello to you. And our apologies for the delays in connecting in. So, and then Meg has got a really nice comment here. Just came back from Italy for Christmas to spend time with family. All the best for the best team of lawyers here. Thank you so much. We'll give you some applause for that. All right. But you can see here, guys, this is quite interesting, Alicia. I was going to pull it up and say, hey, we just had a round of invitations, a PNP that was, just fairly recently. But if we look at the previous rounds of invitations here now, you can see we had a provincial nominee one just a couple days ago where they only issued 574 and 511 was the CRS score. But this
7-Eleven.
is 711. And so Canadian Experience class, just released 8,000 invitations, and the scores are down to 511. And I'll be honest, Alicia, when I look at this, 511 is still so dang high. It is so high. And, to see that this is kind of where we're at is just, it's quite incredible.
Yeah, I mean, and maybe Mark, you can filter by CEC, but
Mhm.
511 is the lowest CEC round of invitation we have had for a very long time. So this is really news to celebrate for lots of people, because if you look, yes, right, December 16th, that 515, that's where I know a lot of my clients got their invitations
Yep.
to apply in that draw. They've been
Yep.
literally waiting for a year and hanging on by their fingernails and hoping
Yep.
that their work permits don't expire.
Yeah.
But if you keep going back in 2025, I don't even think we
No.
had a 511. I think 518 was our lowest maybe for
Yeah.
all of 2025. Was there anything in
Yeah.
January that was lower?
Well, the reason that went down to 518 is because they did two very close within basically a little over a week back-to-back draws of 3,000, which pushed it from 521 to 518. But we have to go back to 2024. Like if
Yeah,
we go back to 2024, how long has it been since we were down at the level that we're at? 509
September.
here, September the 19th. And
Yeah.
and then we continue down, even wow, like when was it below 500? I guess we have to go to September 14th of 2021.
2021.
Like that's how long it's been since we've had a score below 500. So CEC has been unbelievably competitive in this modern era, if you will. And yeah, it's just quite astounding to see what has been transpiring. But I'll be honest, Alicia, I'll take it. I will take this because
Yes.
I was getting so fed up with just the francophone draws. And even then, notwithstanding this big 8,000 that was issued here, if we go back to the regular rounds of invitation, we can see that they still on December the 17th, just before Christmas, did another big French language draw of 6,000, which pushed the CRS score below 400 for French
Yeah.
speaking applicants. So very positive news. I'm sure those who have tuning in and are watching are hopefully some of you got an ITA. Let us know if that was the case, because now these are definitely times to celebrate. So yeah, we're just so very, very happy to see positive things unfolding like this. So happy when
Yeah.
there's been so much news that has just not been exceptional, that, to say the least, right?
Yeah, and if you take a look at the tie-breaking rule on this draw, right? Like the fact that it goes all the way back to June on the tie-breaking rule for the current CEC draw is a good indicator of the fact that people have been waiting for a long time, right? This is over like 7 months of having their profiles just sitting in here. So unfortunately, if your profile is older than June 10th and you were
Yep.
exactly at 511, you're going to lose out. You're not going to
Yep.
get an ITA on this one.
Yep. Exactly. Okay, let's do a few more shout outs here. Let's see if we can flip back. Just give me a second here. I've got so much going on here. Oh, there we go. Okay. I've got a bunch of good stuff going on. Okay. So we've got, let's see who else we can give shout outs to. Akash is stuck at 499. Boy, if you had a little bit of French, you'd be slam dunk. Okay. Indy says that's shocking. Well, it is in this current world. Indy says, question for you both. What are the chances of allowing Americans in under humanity after the states start World War III with everyone? Well, we'll leave that question for a different podcast. That's definitely above our pay grade. And yes, I have to agree here with at DFG43CVX, that coherent array weaver, that 500 is too high. It really is. And there's a lot of good people outside of the country that potentially could come. But the reality is we've got so many in Canada. And when you have individuals that are getting 50 points as individuals for 2 years of Canadian work experience, that's really the decider. That's the shift, the major shift. And then on top of it, everyone that's been learning French, because they really have been. All right, let's see what else we have here. Oh, yeah, Joe says, so close yet so far. Sierra says 491. Unfortunately, my wife's score is low. Yeah, that is something we see a lot of. Ameg says 8,000 is big news. I remember when I was even thinking to come to Canada, points were around 480 to 460 to 480. But Express Entry pool was always way smaller at the time, 40K versus 200,000. That's right. Yep. Akash is working on French currently. Postgrad expires September of this year. Any way to extend a new work permit? Got to have support from the employer. And ultimately, your position has to be one where an LMIA is possible. Other than that, it's hoping you get an ITA and then have an opportunity to do a bridge. But there's not a lot of really secure options. Yep. Meg says there's a lot of competition now for sure. Okay, here's let's jump in. Let's just start with some questions here, Alicia, unless there's
And
something
one
you want
thing,
to chat about.
I just found some breaking news that's hidden in the IRCC rounds of invitation under category-based selection. So I just went
Okay.
and checked the category-based selection. Now there's a new category, physicians with Canadian work experience. So they actually
Okay.
added it as category 7. So if you go to how category-based rounds of invitations work, so if you go back to the IRCC Express Entry page and then you go to category-based selection, we've got current categories, and I haven't had time to trawl through each of the other older categories to see if they changed the knock codes in them. But if you go to category-based selection and you go down to current
Yeah.
categories, you will
Yeah.
see there's brand new physicians with Canadian work experience. They had said
Breaking
this was
news.
coming. There
Mm-hmm.
was no announcement, as far as I could tell, that it was actually implemented. I just literally saw it right now.
Yep.
Physicians with Canadian work experience. So this is different. It's
They said this
separate than
was last
healthcare.
updated December 18th. Do you believe that?
No,
I don't believe
um,
that.
no. But when we look at the physicians with Canadian work experience, this is different, right? So it used to be that physicians could qualify under Section 2 or Category 2, the healthcare and social services occupations, but this is now different. So under Section Category 7, this new category, if you look at who's eligible, now it's 12 months of full-time work experience or an equal amount of part-time work experience within the last 3 years. So remember that healthcare in general in the broader category is 6 months within the last 3 years, but this is 12 months in a single occupation in Canada. So these are only physicians who have 1 year of Canadian work experience, either as a general practitioner, family physician, so the NOC 31102, specialists in surgery 31101, or specialists in clinical and laboratory medicine 31100. So brand new category. They just created it.
Yep. And it's interesting, they've added it. They still have education. They still have ag. Now, I don't know if it's still, yep, useless ag. They still have trade occupations, and they haven't changed any of this. Is our lovely cook still on here? Yeah. Okay. And then we've got a STEM category with no T, I think still. Yeah, no changes. None. And we still have our insurance brokers, but they haven't done any draws at all for STEM in like over, a year plus. So
Yeah.
interesting. The wheels have changed, continue to change, continue to change. Okay, Akash says, for Francophone PR, do you not need work experience? Well, yeah, you do. You have to meet at least one of the eligibilities for the one of the economic PR programs. So to get through the Federal Skilled Worker Program or the Canadian Experience class, which allows you to get into the pool, or federal skilled trade technically, you need to have at least a year of work experience to do that. So you can't just rely on your French without need for work. Okay, let's see here. Yeah, Shirley says, hope another CEC next week and hope it drops to 508. We are trending down there. We really are. So, we'll just have to see how it plays out. But surely, I think a lot of people are hoping that this is just the start of good things to come. Sumit says here, when will the 33,000 work permit to PR roll out in 2026? Well, the government never gives us a lot of advance notice. But if it's a formal new program, I have to assume that there's going to be a little bit of a heads up. I can tell you that if it's a new program and it's not something that's dealt with purely within, the rounds of invitations and the selection criteria for CRS, if it's not within Express Entry, then I will absolutely do a course to help people prepare for it. I remember the last year at a PR Pathway, we had about 550 people who subscribed to the course and went through it. And it was a race to file. And people just could not, you just couldn't take a chance not to get it right the first time. And it was really interesting to watch people who were able to get their application submitted in the first 15 minutes who had their permanent residence in, literally in 2 weeks. Whereas there were other people who were slower getting their application submitted, still got in, within the draw. There were 90, I think it ended up 97 or 98,000 total people that were still able to get in, but many of them had to wait almost 2 years to get their permanent residence. So it's an interesting world. And yeah, if they do have any information released on the 33K, we will definitely start to build out a prep class to help people be prepared. Okay, Alicia, here's one we see a lot of. We're getting a lot of these procedural fairness letters. So IRCC has asked Nanalori to provide the complete and current address. Please, what documents can I provide to prove my current address? That's really interesting. Now, we don't know what the context is here, Alicia, whether it's express entry or a different type of application, but providing a complete address, my complete and current address, I'm not exactly sure what they'd be fishing for a current address.
Yeah, I mean, so it's interesting because if you're talking about Express Entry, they've modified a few things in Express Entry. So in the profiles, they are now asking for your postal code. This is new, right? So if you're in Canada, they want to know specifically where you're living, where you are applying from, and if you're claiming a job offer, where's your employer located and what's their postal code. So they are now keeping better tabs on Canadian addresses, postal codes, whether this is Canadian work experience and in what province, and specifically what postal code. If you're talking about maybe you live outside of Canada, it's possible that because some countries list addresses quite differently, maybe there's no street number, maybe there's no sort of PO, like it's a PO box, it's a rural address. Sometimes IRCC has questions to try to determine where you are, so it might be in that context. But Nana, we'd need more information about what kind of application you've submitted. Are you in Canada? Are you outside Canada? Is this an additional document request?
All right, let's go to our next question. This one is from Serv Shupadye. What all to include in history document and how to include them? Would appreciate your guidance. So I'm assuming maybe this is personal history within Express Entry, Alicia. Are documents required?
So in general, no, they don't need documents to support your personal history. But if you're talking about Express Entry and you have received an ITA, then you've got to give absolutely every single date. So without any gaps, where you've been in your personal history for the last 10 years or since age 18. And IRCC is very, very sticky about this. So if you miss a day, they can return your entire application. So they do want to know in your personal history, if that's what you're talking about in Express Entry, what were all of your activities? And they say list all of your education activities, your work activities, periods of unemployment, military service, government service, and memberships in organizations. And even if those are overlapping, you definitely want to list them all. Usually you will list them in reverse chronological order. So you will start with now and you'll go backwards in time. Most of the time, they don't ask for additional documents unless you have done military service. And if you've done military service, then they will normally ask you for a supplemental form with who you were reporting to, what were your duties, what was your rank, where were you stationed, did you ever have any active combat?
All right, next one here is Aaron. Says, Mark and Alicia, what are the next steps to do when the applicant has not received an AOR yet on a PNP non-express entry? So they applied back in November 2025 and the work permit is expiring. Well, October 2026, that's probably going to have enough time to get back to you. You just have to be a little patient. The PNP nomination is expiring May 2026. Now, your bridging work permit, obviously, Alicia's got a whole blog post on the nuances of express entry versus a PNP. And when you have the PNP nominations, applying for a bridge where it's employer specific or otherwise. So Alicia, what are your thoughts for Aaron here?
Yeah, Erin, take a look at my article. So if you go to our Holthe Immigration Law website and you go down to the blogs and resources, and then you go to the article that talks about bridging open work permit versus bridging closed work permit. But there are key requirements for proving that you're eligible for a bridging work permit as long as I'm reading your question properly and you actually submitted your full PNP PR portal application, so it was non-express entry, yes, you need to be in the country, you need to maintain your status, and you need to show that you have acknowledgement of receipt. And yes, I've worked with a number of clients who've had to wait 6 months sometimes before they got their AOR on that bridging in order to file their bridging work permit. But once you have that AOR, as long as you've submitted a complete application, and this is important, if you've submitted a complete application, then you should be eligible for a bridging. And now whether it's a bridging open or a bridging closed depends on your nomination certificate, if it was tied to a particular employer or not. But the fact that your nomination is expiring should not affect your eligibility for the bridging work permit as long as you submitted a complete PR portal application. The risk is if for some reason you forgot a document on your PR portal application and it gets bounced and returned to you, that can for sure be a problem. But as long as you submitted that full application while your nomination was still active, then take a look at the article on whether you need to do a bridging open or a bridging closed. If you're getting really, really close to your expiry date on your work permit, reach out, book a consult. We'll talk to you about what your options are because you do want to try to maintain your status.
Yeah, you do. All right. The Son of Wealth here. Welcome here, tuning in on X. I have 499 from last year, but I'm not sure why my score is not changed as January makes 2 years of CEC, but my score remains at 499. And
Did you have a birthday?
that's possible. So one of the factors, if you've had a birthday, that can kind of offset. If you hit 2 years of Canadian work experience, then that potentially could add 10, but there's also some skill transferability points that could be triggered depending upon whether or not you've otherwise accumulated all 100 of them. So really why it hasn't gone up or changed, I can't really speak to that, but usually what we can do during consultations, we'll just go in and take a look at how you've answered the questions and be able to determine from there. So that may be the reason. So, but there always is, because when it comes to the calculation of CRS points, it's how you answer the questions that triggers the score that that you receive. All right. Okay. Let's jump here to IELTS prep. Do I have to give my pay slips in OINP International Student Stream?
So if you're looking at the OINP International Student Stream and you're talking about job offers, so these are non-express entry linked applications, make sure that you're meeting eligibility criteria, right? So you want to show that you're meeting the eligibility criteria for the wage, because for International Student Stream, you are required to prove that you're meeting above the low wage in order to be eligible for the stream. And then it also depends on what you claimed for your worker points scoring, because different wages would equate to different points. So yes, you've got to be able to prove that when you made your profile, whatever points you claimed were accurate and that you are getting paid above the low wage under the program requirements.
Okay, Tanya says, hey guys, application already submitted on December 24th after ITA. How long should I usually wait to receive a response or an update? Okay, so let's just slide over here. So this is something now that we actually can kind of trust. So Tanya, if we come over here and we look at the processing times and we go to our economic immigration and we choose. Now I'm going to assume in your case, we'll say your CEC, okay? So we click on Canadian Experience Class, and then we say, have you already applied? We'll say yes. Then it prompts us to put it in. So if you apply just in December, so we go here to the bottom, December, and click Get Processing Times. Estimated time left. This is hilarious. Data not available. Interesting. Well, let's just go back here. Because you submitted it so recently, it's really not too hard. We will just say no. And then we'll get processing times. And right now, oh, it's bumped up a little bit, Alicia. That's interesting. So the Canadian Experience class is now listing processing times of 7 months. Let's see what the federal skilled worker has. So skilled workers federal. No, we'll say, go here. Weird, 6 months. Well, who knows? But one thing I do know is that the processing times are updated quite frequently. Now, with that being said, this last update was almost a month ago. So they're overdue to update the processing times. But yeah, it's got, but yet it says here, date modified January the 7th. So someone, that's today. So someone's struggling a little bit here, updating this, the actual information. Good times. Good times. All right, next on our list. Okay, S. Danjum says, please give some information for international skilled worker, PNP, non-express entry, Outlander applications. I think this is an appropriate ring the bell here. And the reason we ring the bell is because we need more specific information to actually provide advice. Well, really to provide information that's a little bit more directed. But within the context of our live streams that we're doing here, our Q&As, it's hard for us to really provide an individual immigration strategy or plan without knowing a whole lot more information about you. So we will direct you back when I ring this bell. That means that I'm going to direct you back here to go to our firm website. And then when you're here, you can just click on speak to a lawyer, and then you can choose which lawyer you want and book your consult accordingly. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, what I would say in general is it is extremely difficult to get a PNP nomination if you do not have any high-skilled Canadian work and you've been working in a province and you have an employer who's given you a job offer. It is almost impossible to try to get in with zero Canadian work experience, unless maybe you have an employer who says that they would be willing to give you a job offer in the future. But it is so competitive right now under PNPs that they are really prioritizing people who've lived and worked in their province already.
Yeah. All right. Kuber says, waiting for skills trade, but scores at 505. That's too high. Why so less ITA, only 1250? Well, they have made a decision that they're only going to, with these category-based draws, only issue so many invitations for those categories. So the 1250 is not unusual in the context of trades, but the scores are high because of cooks. So people that are working as cooks often have gone to university and obtained degrees, and then they end up working in service industry, and cooks are a trade and you only need 6 months. And so that's why, realistically. All right. Okay. Akash says, okay, thanks. Okay, thanks. Does work experience while on applied status for postgrad work permit count towards CRS score?
I'm assuming you mean implied or maintained status.
Yeah, maintain status, I think is what they mean. Yeah. So when you first submit your postgrad work permit, at that stage, the IRPA has the provision that allows you to start work the day you submit your postgrad work permit application.
So yes, so the rule is, and I wrote another article on this, but it's all about, can students be working after the end of their studies? So be careful with making sure that you're not claiming work experience before you actually submitted your PGWP application. But as soon as you do submit your PGWP, you're still a student, you still have authorization to work depending on what it says under the conditions on your study permit. As long as all those things are true and you have implied or maintained status to continue to work, then you can start to count from the day you submit your PGWP for your high-skilled Canadian work experience. But you still have to show the hours, and it's got to be high-skilled work.
Yeah. All right, back to this one here. I popped up shortly. For my previous job of 2 years, I've only 4 months of pay slips, but I can include all bank statements, tax documents. Not having sufficient salary slips, is that an issue for Express Entry?
So one of the things is that we are Canadian immigration lawyers, and we always want to be able to talk with you to give you individual advice. The reason that Mark and I pop on this channel and try to give as much immigration information as possible is we're trying to help as many people as we can who have questions that we can answer generally with information. But in terms of needing to know what kind of job, are you talking about a Canadian job? Are you talking about foreign work experience? How long ago was it? What other sort of evidence do you have from your employer? Can you prove it's high skilled? How are you showing your hours? we just need to know more. And so if you have specific questions like this, please reach out. You can go to our website, book a consultation. I will look at specifically what you have in terms of what you are trying to claim for points and whether I will give you an opinion on whether I think that's sufficient evidence to prove what you're trying to claim for points.
Yeah. Okay. Olya says, if you get a nomination from the province, which draw to expect, PNP or CEC? Or does it
Yeah,
even
so
matter?
it doesn't effectively matter. If you get a PNP nomination and it is an express entry linked, so keep in mind, each province generally has express entry linked applications and some that are not express entry linked. They used to be called paper applications, but now they're through the PR portal. So if it is a non-express entry linked application, now you're dealing with a PR portal, it's a whole different world. But if it is express entry linked, then you would get 600 points added to your express entry profile. It's not always 600 points just on top of your points because you get maxed out in certain categories. So, but if you get that many points, you will for sure get a next invitation on the next round. And that might be a PNP round, or it might be a CEC round if they happen to do a CEC round. It doesn't usually matter unless you are trying to show settlement funds or prove that you don't have to prove settlement funds. And if you're drawn under P&P, that's where sometimes people are trying to figure out, do I need to prove settlement funds or not? But that's really the only difference.
All right. And then Kuber's has a nice comment. You guys are amazing with the knowledge. Well, we try to provide current, accurate information always. And Alicia and I have been at this racket for over 20 years, and each of us, and you learn a few things along the way, but we also put a lot of time in constantly reviewing policy changes, getting up to date on the latest immigration changes, paying close attention to what the levels plans and where the direction of immigration is headed at a 10,000 foot level, so that we can try to some extent, discern what might the future hold for our clients who are struggling with options. Because I find, Alicia, that when people are looking for immigration options, there will be some new program announced, and not many people will be accessing it. And people initially will get permanent residence, and then everybody else will kind of shift, and they'll do their best to try to meet the requirements so they can get in too. And then that program will be oversubscribed, and then they'll close it down, or it'll get bogged down. So it's yeah, so we try to do what we can to advise people so that they don't get in those sticky situations. And so, yeah, there's always a link in the description wherever you're tuning into us, and you can connect and book a consult with us. Okay, Ash says, which job category would an administrative assistant fall under? Example, trades. Working in a construction company as an administrative assistant? Maybe that's the question.
So maybe, Mark, you can go to the job bank. So normally what I do with clients is there's two websites. There's the National Occupation Classification Code website, or there's the job bank. Job bank's just a little bit easier to find things on. So you go to search and you go to taking a look at what kind of occupation. So I normally go to the occupation search on job bank, and you can enter in, well, your job title, but you can also enter in other details about your job in order to try to figure out. So I go to the Outlook reports, and you can find information there, or you can also search just by your job title. So if you go to occupation, explore the market in the next tab there, yeah. And if you go occupation, and then you click, yeah, and then you just enter in your job title. So for here, you would say administrative assistant, and normally that's a separate NOC. So that an administrative assistant is a NOC that normally gets coded as the 13110. So it is a high skilled NOC. You don't have to put the location, but you could. This is now going to pull up a summary. It's going to pull up a description. And so you'd go to the description and you'd take a look on your description and try to figure out, well, does this fit with what I do on a regular basis at this job? And is this what my employer would say that I'm doing? So go to the description, take a look. If this is what you're doing, right? So this is the lead statement at the top. You perform a wide variety of administrative duties in support of managerial and professional employers. So this is not trades. This is managerial and professional employers.
Yep.
And then you take a look. So it has to be the lead statement plus the majority of these job duties. You don't have to prove the ones that start with may. So take off the last three, but can you prove 75% of the other job duties plus the activities of that lead statement? If you can't, this is not the right knock for you, even if the job title is correct. So then you'd have to spend some more time searching through the knock or the job bank to try to figure out, well, what do I do? And sometimes they have related job titles, and you can kind of go to the bottom and take a look. Well, maybe I'm, an administrative secretary, or maybe I'm a technical secretary. But if your job is the knock code is a second digit of 4 or 5, remember that is not going to be high skilled work. It is not going to qualify for express entry.
Yep. All right. Zipping along here. Let's see what we got next for a question. Okay, so Pinoy says, good morning here from Edmonton. Will it be an issue if one will not renew an expired ECA for an international bachelor's degree and just claim the diploma in Alberta for AAIP EOI points?
Yes, it is an issue. It is a problem. So there are ways that people are trying to game the Alberta Worker EOI points grid, and this is one of them, to say, look, oh, I actually don't have my highest level of education as a bachelor's. I actually only have this Canadian education credential. You can't do that. So if you take a look at the Alberta Worker points grid, it clearly says your highest level and then whether your highest level was achieved in Canada. They also have an FAQ page about this. So if you go to the AAIP website and you go to frequently asked questions, it talks about, how do I claim highest level of education? So if you go down to common questions, AAIP answers for common questions, you'll go down to the expression of interest system, you'll go down to education credentials. Yeah, and then right there. So click on points for highest level of education at the top. And this is going to give you information on what is your highest level of education only. So you can't say, oh, I just don't have a bachelor's degree. AAIP has been following up with people. I have seen them writing letters, follow-up additional document request letters. Basically, they're worried about misrepresentation, right? They're worried that people are gaming the system in order to hide their bachelor's degree, claim their Canadian Alberta education in a 2-year diploma as higher in order to maximize their points. And you can't do it. They will crack down and you risk misrepresentation. So be really, really careful that you have to be honest in the points that you're claiming and making sure that you are correct and accurate.
Here's an interesting one. We've got a Facebook. So we have had an X. We've got a Facebook. We got a YouTube. This is great. We're getting some reach today. My brother and sister-in-law is a level 1 early childhood care at Pincher Creek. What would be an ideal pathway for them to get PR? I'm going to do this right here. Ring it again here, Rob. The best thing in the world is for your brother and sister-in-law to reach out to us and book a consult so that we can assess all of the options that might be available. I don't know if you have any high-level kind of thoughts for Rob here.
Yeah, so if you're kind of trying to help them qualify for, maybe they might meet an education category draw, right? So maybe they can qualify for express entry, then making sure that they can qualify for express entry. So maximizing their points. Do they have their education credential assessment? Do they have their language test results? Can they get that 1 year of high skilled Canadian work experience? Maybe they can look at, is there another possible pathway if they're looking at also caregiver. Oh, caregiver. Yeah. Caregiver, there's almost no options. I'm sure that Marcus talked about it on the last few
Yeah.
lives the last couple of weeks, but they've basically
Yeah.
shut down the caregiver program. So that is not something that's going to be helpful. So probably focusing on, can you make sure that your brother and sister-in-law are getting enough points to qualify for a CEC draw, but it is so hard unless they are super young and they have really high education and fantastic language scores. Maybe they could get a targeted educator draw under CEC, but still their CRS points have to be really high.
All right. Okay, let's jump back to next question. Krish says, what are the differences between a PNP versus FSW Express Entry?
So under Express Entry, there are different categories of draws, right? So technically IRCC could do a CEC draw, they could do an FSW draw, they have not. They could do a PNP draw, or they could do a category-based draw. So every type of Express Entry application still needs to qualify under either CEC, FSW, or FST, Federal Skilled Trades. So if you get drawn under PNP, then you still need to meet eligibility program criteria for FSW, CEC, or FST. So take a look at the IRCC webpage, take a look at our website. We've got a ton of information on Express Entry. This is what we do. Many articles. We've got podcasts if you want to listen to them, just to try to understand how does this work.
Yeah, and I cover a lot of that also within the Express Entry course, which is our it's the flagship kind of offering that we have through the Canadian Immigration Institute. It's the Express Entry Accelerator. So go, you can click in the link below and subscribe to that as well. John Snow says, how to prove cash salary for FSW, considering there are more PFLs and rejections for cash salaries? How to prove beyond reasonable doubt? Well, the reality is you don't need to, to convince them beyond a reasonable doubt, but you do have to convince them on a balance of probabilities. And so, Alicia, what are some things that you do to try to prove this, when people are paid in cash for their work?
Yeah, and it's hard. It's hard if you don't have a paper record, if your employer is not giving you pay stubs, right? I was just working with a couple right now. They can't get their pay stubs. Whatever you can do to try to get a very, very solid letter of employment from your past employer. And so take a look at what IRCC requires for Express Entry. You want to make sure it's on company letterhead. You want to make sure it's signed by your direct supervisor or manager. You want to make sure that that letter has all of the details about when your start date was, when your end date was, what your job title, your job duties, what your hours of work were, what your pay was, what your salary and benefits were. All of those are things that IRCC really, really wants in a very comprehensive letter of employment from your employer. Sometimes it's not possible to get that, but hopefully you can. And if you get that, that goes a long way to proving the legitimacy of what you're claiming for work experience. Sometimes I recommend that people go to the website of their employer, or they provide a link to the website of the employer, especially if you were on the website of that employer, because it shows that you were working there, especially if it has your job title. Sometimes there's other ways to prove, okay, well, here are my hours if you have timesheets with the employer. So maybe you have cash salary, but maybe there's timesheets or kind of records where it shows where you started and ended work. That plus the fact that you have a letter from your employer, and maybe you can have tax documents when it's cash salary. Normally there's not a lot of tax documents. Sometimes you can show bank account balances to prove that on these days, and it lines up with what your employer said on your pay periods. Sometimes you need to also get letters from coworkers confirming that you are working there, but it definitely does become harder if you are getting a cash salary. Just like Mark said, we do have the Express Entry Accelerator course. We have an entire section on how to prove work experience in tricky situations.
Yeah. Ash says, thanks so much, Mark and Alicia. You're very welcome, Ash. I also wanted to put this one out here and give a little applause. And in this case, the applause is for Alicia. So this Newman says, I have never seen an immigration lawyer with as much detailed knowledge as Alicia. She always has a valid answer. Huge respect for what you guys are doing in these live streams. Thanks so much. We really appreciate that. Yeah. And Gamel says, thank you guys. Mark will always be part of my immigration story. Thank you for guiding us during the TR to PR program in 2021. Yes, indeed. I will let my brother know ASAP to visit you and book a consult. God bless. You too, Gamel. God bless you as well. All right. Okay, let's see here. Let's hit Jimmy here. He says, if my language test scores expires a couple of days after I get my ITA, can I still accept it and apply? That's a great question, Alicia. So
I wouldn't
after ITA, but before EAPR.
I wouldn't trust it. Like I would make sure that absolutely you get your EAPR in, but if you cannot possibly get your EAPR in before you like a couple days, I don't know how quickly you can submit your EAPR. When you take a look at the language test validity, it has to be valid at the time you submit your application, and your application is not submitted until your EAPR is submitted. And keep in mind that they use UTC time. So this was exactly my problem when we were working with my clients that finally got an ITA December 15th, but I took a look at the spouse's language test results, and her language test results, and here's the thing, there's the test date where you're sitting and taking the test, and then there's the test result date. To be extra conservative and safe, I said, let's just use the test sitting date, just in case. Because if you are wrong, you are going to lose all the spousal points and you're going to lose your ITA. But technically in the IRCC webpage, when you take a look, it says the test results cannot be older than 2 years at the time you submit your application if you have an ITA. So when you submit your application is only the date of receipt on your EAPR, and remember they use UTC time, so subtract the number of hours that you think you have. It's not based on your time zone, it's based on universal coordinated time.
You bet. Excellent. Okay, next one. This is from Missy. I received an Express Entry PNP nomination and, oh boy, CEC ITA, which would be, and I'm assuming the Express Entry PNP is probably well, no, it says Express Entry PNP and CEC ITA. Okay, well, they're basically the same thing. Which would be a better option in terms of less requirements or probability of approval? I have 30 days to accept the nomination and withdraw CEC ITA. Okay, received Express Entry PNP nomination. Okay, so I think what's happened is she submitted an application through one of the PNPs, and then before the but she says she's got the nomination.
Maybe she got the ITA before the nomination got added to her profile.
And maybe they didn't realize it. I don't know. The reality is, Missy, Alicia and I never withdraw any application that is floating out there. We always proceed forward with what's in front of us. Now, if your PNP, if you truly have a nomination, well, you're destined to get an ITA through that regardless. So if you do have just a straight up CEC ITA without need for that extra 600 points, then realistically, you're just going to proceed forward with the CEC ITA. If truly your PNP was that's a weird situation, because usually what happens, you guys, is when people get their nomination, or the province sees that a person has received an ITA, then and the profile is now locked, they will say, oh, we see you've got an ITA. Do you still want to proceed? So usually the province can see, because they don't want to waste a nomination for someone who through in the Express Entry stream if they already have an ITA. So that's really kind of a weird situation, Missy. Yeah, ultimately your CEC ITA is going to be the one, if that's indeed the reality of your situation. I've never seen that. I guess they're like ships passing in the night, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I would say reach out, book a consultation, because that is unusual.
Yeah, maybe there's something wonky. Yeah.
More details. Yeah.
That's a technical legal term, wonky. So yeah. Okay, that's when Alicia and I see something we really haven't seen before. So, but it just doesn't fit. All right. Deidre says here, for Express Entry, must an employee include a previous co-op term in the employment reference letter along with current full-time employment? So I'm assuming this is the same employer, Alicia.
I usually do. So if you are working with an employer and you had a co-op with or an internship with that employer, I would normally have them state that as well. The reason is sometimes you can get in trouble with unauthorized work. If it was in Canada and you were working over the hours you're allowed to work as a student, or maybe you were somehow not authorized to do that work. So you normally want to acknowledge, yeah, I did that work. If it was unauthorized, you're going to have to be really careful about how you explain that and come clean about it, because making sure that you're telling the truth in your application is really important. And often you have to declare, especially in your PGWP applications, did you ever work without authorization? But sometimes this is where people realize, oops, I actually was not working in accordance with the restrictions on my study permit and something was going on with that. But of course, if you're looking at Canadian work, you cannot claim CEC points, Canadian High Skilled Work Experience points, for time when you are a full-time student in Canada. So if this is an internship outside of Canada, yes, you can. And you will definitely want to include that period in your work experience letter because it could count for foreign work experience. So it depends. And if there's an issue with unauthorized work, talk to a lawyer, reach out, book a consultation, because you'll have to be careful about what gets disclosed. Make sure that you explain it, talk about your previous applications and whether or not you disclosed it in previous applications.
Yeah. Okay, I don't know, Misty, if this clarifies or helps this at all. Misty says, I received a nomination November 27th, but I didn't accept it yet. Then I received CEC ITA December 16th. Well, okay, did you actually receive a nomination, or did you receive a notification of interest from a province to submit an application? So did you formally file a full application with whatever province and then actually receive your nomination certificate on the 27th? Okay, is that the case? It could be, but then while you're waiting to submit or update your express entry, maybe you received a CEC after that. Maybe that's the case. Well, the reality is, if you've got your ITA, you've got it, and you know, I don't think my advice changes any here. It just, yeah, it's still kind of wonky.
It's just
Yeah.
normally you don't have to accept a nomination certificate,
There's
right?
no such thing
Normally,
as accepting. It's just
right.
issued. Yeah. And you
Yeah,
file your PR or not.
it's just issued on a certain day. But if you're talking about an expression of interest and you got a notification of interest from the province, then you normally have a time deadline, depending on the province, within which to apply and submit your full application. So that's why we're trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah. Confusing. Yeah. Book a consult. Okay. Anime Club says basically they filed their application, started processing February the 20th of 2024. So this has been in the queue a long time. Medicals July of last year. Just on December the 23rd, IRCC requests a Schedule A update, which I submitted. Okay. I was going to say you should talk to us before you return that. Does this late request for Schedule A usually mean I am in the final security screen stage? And how long does it typically take from here? Thank you. Okay, so this is a loaded question because it could mean a couple different things. One, when Schedule A's are requested again, it could very well be that, you know, it's been so long since you filed your application, they just want an update on what you're doing with yourself. That could be it. An alternative scenario is that they found something that they don't like in a previous application, and they're just waiting for you to say the same wrong thing twice in another Schedule A, so they can kind of catch you in it, whether they find there's a misrepresentation or something like that. And as everybody is probably aware, they're scrubbing the heck out of past applications that relate to your UCI, your file history, to look for inconsistencies that don't line up. And even very innocuous inconsistencies, they're all over and alleging misrepresentation. So, boy, so you've already submitted it. Well, there's not much that we can do at this stage to assist other than, you know, it could be one of those things. It could be. They don't ask for Schedule A's usually unless there's a real reason to ask for them. And we've found when processing times are maybe a little not quite as lengthy as yours, that when a Schedule A comes, that's a big, huge red flag. And it could mean that there is problems with your application. So, but like you said, February 2024, we're closing in on 2 years. And so it may be that they're just truly just want an update on what you've been doing with yourself. And that's contained within the Schedule A. All right. Let's see here. What's next? Okay, Kuber says currently scoring 103 in the BCPNP. Will the BCPNP go back to inviting decent numbers of draws as PNP got their quota reinstigated for 2026? You know,
So, okay,
it's,
so take a look at the
yeah,
news because on December
yeah.
18th, BCPNP said, you know what, our nomination allocation for 2026 is 5,254. BC had requested an allocation of 9,000 for 2026, but it's going to continue to discuss the allocation with IRCC. It's determining how best to use this limited allocation, and we'll share the 2026 priorities in the new year. So that's
That's
all it says.
crazy. Did Alberta not hear that they were going to get about 9,000? I thought Alberta
So
had a boost potentially back up there, but maybe everybody's still getting the shaft. Oh boy.
that so that's what BC said on December 18th, and there
Mhm.
hasn't been anything in the news section on BC
Yeah.
since then. So they're still trying
Wow.
to negotiate.
Huh. Okay. S. Danjum says, I'm waiting for the last 17 months for PR, outland applicant, non-express entry PNP, but still no FD. What's your thoughts? How much time it can take? Okay, once again, you guys, just go, check out the processing times, and they're not that off. These are pretty close. So express entry, so sorry, this is non-express entry. So provincial nominee, I think is what we've got there. Yeah, PNP, yeah. And so provincial nominee online, no. And then it says, have you already applied? And waiting for 17 months. So how far back is that? I guess that would be 2024, maybe August. Let's see, 4, 12, 4, August, July. Maybe it's like September, maybe we'll say. We'll say September of 2024 is probably around that range. And you look at processing times. So 3 months left still. Maybe I'm a little bit off, but go check the processing times and punch your information in, and it'll tell you. It'll tell you. Okay. Mature says, Happy New Year. I already filed the HNC plus TRP and open work permit probably with you guys. Okay. I wonder who this is. Okay. Mike, with you guys, my question is, if I learn French, can I still apply for French-based category? Well, yeah, you still have the ability to do that. You know, our goal here is to keep you in valid status to some extent, right? And so ultimately, there's a lot of uncertainty in that world. But yeah, if you're continuing to learn French, it's, you know, those doors are still going to be open. See, one of the things people have to understand is that with the Francophone draws, whether you're CEC, FSW, it doesn't matter. Whether you're in Canada, outside Canada, it doesn't matter. So in some of your cases, if you guys are studying French and ultimately your work permits run out and you have to return home, which I strongly advise everyone, if your status is disappearing and you don't have a path forward, don't stay in Canada without authorization. Alicia did our whole series on Time's Up, in particular, the one episode on our podcast that you can catch here on the YouTube channel or wherever you're watching our lives. We had a specific episode directly dealing with the consequences of choosing not to return and remain in Canada without status. But when you go home with the Francophone draws, they're not discriminators. If you still have the points that you need to get that round of invitation score, then you're coming in, whether it's CEC or FSW. So yeah, French is never going to be a bad decision, ever, ever. Not sure which client this is. I don't know who this is. Okay, I think we're just about wrapped up. Suliano, you're very welcome. Says thank you. Panoy says thank you. Okay, I think we've got this. This is kind of a tricky one. IELTS just dropped it in there again. Paid above the minimum wage in my offer letter, which includes night shift premium. They will ask for my pay slips and INP international students. So what to do? This is, I don't have an answer for this one. I don't know.
So IELTS prep, I'm working right now with some of my clients who got a notification of interest in a nomination under International Student Stream under Ontario. So the difficulty is you've got to make sure that your employer did this properly, right? Because it's an employer-driven stream. So your employer had to have submitted their piece through OINP. They had to go, they have to put in their job offer, they've got to confirm the terms of the job. And OINP would have given you a worker EOI score based on your wage in the job offer, and also based on the fact that it was meeting program eligibility, that it was more than the low wage for your location of work. I don't know exactly what happened and whether your employer properly inputted your wage or not from what you're saying there. But you have to be able to prove that you meet program eligibility. So if for some reason you're not meeting the wage that you needed to have met, it can be an issue.
Yeah. I'm just going to address this last one from Nana. Nana, you got to book a consult. So Nana says, please, what documents can I provide to prove my current address as IRCC needs it to make a final decision for my PR application? This is not something where I'm ringing the bell. You got to book a consult because we need a whole lot more information. I'm not even sure why they're asking for proof of documentation for your current address as it is. I don't know the context. I don't know what's leading up to all of this. And so neither I nor Alicia are able to give you that actual legal advice. You need to book a consult on that one.
And it could be, Nana, like, maybe you didn't tell them that you left Canada and that you're no longer in the country, and now they need to do a different landing procedure if you're not physically present. It's not an electronic confirmation of permanent residence if you're not physically present in Canada. And so if you left and you didn't tell them, then you would need to show the address, and then they would need to do a landing procedure where they would need your passport and you'd need a landing visa to come back. So
Yeah.
there might be a whole bunch of things happening.
Yeah. And the last one, Laylo says, my daughter's a fresh dentist. Hey, that's awesome. I've got lots of dentists in my family. Her postgrad ends on May 20th. January. Okay. She has a high wage job offer and the clinic is not familiar with the LMIA. Can you help? Alicia and I and Igor, we had our kind of our annual kind of review / quarterly review. And as we plan the future of our firm and everything, and we all we all came to the consensus that, boy, LMIAs are miserable beasts. They're so ugly and they're so difficult. And do we do them? Yes, we do. But the reality is, do we love doing them? No, not particularly. They are very, very painful.
So, Laylo, yes, we do. I do a decent number of LMIA applications for employers, but keep in mind it would not be you who's paying for our legal fees to help an employer with an LMIA. It would be the employer, right?
Yeah.
The employer is the one who has to make the application to ESDC to ask for that labor market impact assessment. And so the employer should be the one hiring us, and we can guide them through that process of, all right, proving that they require that LMIA, that they've advertised and recruited, they cannot find a Canadian dentist to fill the role, and only then, if they get their LMIA approved, could they offer the position to your daughter, and then she would apply for that employer-specific work permit.
Yeah, boy, yeah, LMIAs. Yeah, we've been doing them for like 20 years. When they were used to call them labor market opinions, LMOs, and then they become LMIAs, and every year they become, it seems like, more and more difficult. We thought with the creation of the online filing system that would make life easier, but it all the new added requirements. And then right now, the big headache that we have is that the government is just looking for every way they can to reject these. They just don't want to approve them, but they don't want to remove them from the regulations. And so now that the tool is tripping up people when they're trying to post ads on the job bank. And there's just so many little pitfalls and problems. And it is an expensive process for an employer who wants to do it. Because as a firm, it is a massive amount of work. And so our fees are commensurate with the time that's required. And, Alicia and myself and Igor, we work directly with the employers. There's nobody, we don't hire people in between to liaise. We work directly with our employers. We teach them everything that we know. We work on things collaboratively. You can go to our website and see how we work with our clients. We're not the same as other firms. We are really focused on education, and we don't take people's applications over in a traditional sense. So so just go check that out. Suliano, he talks about Schedule A, had many errors, wrong country name, only covered 10 years. Yeah. So ultimately the question is, do the errors cause a rejection or just a delay? Well, If they don't like it, you'll get a finding of misrepresentation, not just a rejection. And delays, maybe you're French, because I'll be honest, I like they tend to have a little bit of a different standard if you're going through the French categories. But in your situation here, it's hard. You've already submitted this, so there's not a lot that we can do. But in all honesty, I strongly encourage you to book a consultation, Suliano, because at times in the past when this has happened, and I've discovered something after someone is submitted to Schedule A, well, then sometimes we can go quickly, try to fix or correct or adjust or whatever it might be, and then submit another web form that's not solicited by IRCC to try to fix things. But no, it's a huge consequence if things weren't done properly, and that's probably why it's taken 2 years for your application. It's because of the errors. Delays are one thing, yeah, and that's not great, but it's more that I'm concerned about your application getting refused. Okay, oh yeah, there's so much. And then back on X here, Son of Wealth says, I have 499, did my co-op with the government of Alberta. I am so sorry. What a waste of time. From September to December. I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't say that. Government and institutional, employers and things like that are not always the best supporters of permanent residents. So anyways, the government of Alberta from September to December 2023 got retained in January 2024. And my score should have increased in January 2026. Yeah, I recommend you book a consult, Son of Wealth. And we can go in, we can take a look at your portal, see exactly what you've got in there, and then try to make sense of it. That's often what we have to do when our clients are trying to explain to us what's wrong, and it's just things aren't adding up.
It might also be how you listed your work experience, right? So
Mhm.
if you listed it, if it was part-time, if it was a different hours requirement, if it was anything less than 30 hours when you were working as a co-op student, and then you changed, so you ended that period of work and you had another period of work when you actually got full-time employment, take a look, and you might have to really carefully add up your weeks of work and how many hours in those weeks to see whether you're actually hitting a full-time equivalent.
Yeah. All right. So we'll wrap it up here. Oh, I didn't realize that my mic was so loud. I'm probably peaking here. I finally looking at my sound levels. Anyways, so we'll wrap it up here. And thanks, S. Danjum says you're doing a great job. Love for both of you from Pakistan. Thank you so much. We really appreciate that. A little applause. And Layla says if the employer is hiring your firm, then possible. Yes, that is the only way we work for LMI with respective LMIAs is when the employer is engaging us. So same story. It starts with an initial consultation with that employer, and they can do the same link as everybody else to set that up with their firm. All right. I think we have finally reached the end of the line, and we are so grateful for everybody who tuned in. This was a fun kind of live Q&A. We didn't have overwhelming numbers today. I think people are still sorting through the holidays, but it was really good to reach out to X and Facebook as well as YouTube for this live stream. And thanks for all of you for your questions. If we weren't able to get to your question, my apologies. We have to draw a line at some point. This is something that Alicia and I have been doing for so many years now. And we are we just love doing this. We love trying to help people. We love sharing the news when there's a big express entry draw like we have, like we just received here. I'm trying to find it now, but the 8,000 spots that were extended, and it was at 512, 511, I can't remember, 511, which is great news. So we're here to help support you guys in any way. The Express Entry Accelerator DIY course, I just had an awesome masterclass last night. We have those every 2 weeks. Anyone who subscribes to the course can get access to all of the updates in the future, as well as come back as many times as they want. And yeah, the stream of people that are retaining us for Express Entry, I'll be honest, has never been higher in the whole history of Express Entry. And why? Because it's a really, really difficult thing now. Immigration, the way they're adjudicating applications, they didn't show mercy before, but now it's just borderline cruel how they're approaching these applications. And we find that the way we work with our clients is something that really, really benefits both us and the client, because you guys are smart, you do your work, you listen to our instructions, we work collaboratively together. And when we do that, it significantly reduces the errors within our firm. If we're trying to transcribe something, and when we have a chance to talk with you directly and work on the applications directly without taking over control, that full support model we just love. And as a firm, it's just been so good for us and so good for our clients. And you can go check out the reviews on Google for the firm and the experience that people have had working with us. But it's yeah, it's wonderful. So we're pretty happy about what we're doing. We're pretty busy right now, but we're doing our very best to help all of you as you're navigating this crazy world that we call Canadian immigration. All right. Thanks, everyone. Take care.